Hey guys, tonight we're going somewhere that's hot, holy, and heavily haunted. Welcome back to Ancient Secrets and Soothing Sounds, the show where history gets cozy and the past feels just a breath away. Tonight, we're following the glistening curve of the Nile, drifting past temple ruins and golden sand dunes into the mystical realm of ancient Egypt. But hold on. This isn't your standard textbook pyramid tour. Nope. We're diving into the enchanted heart of Egyptian belief, the world of Heka, their sacred force of magic that tied life, death, gods, and even morning sunrises into one shimmering thread. Picture this. It's 3,000 years ago. You wake up in a reed house near the riverbank. You give a nod to the hippo goddess Taurad to protect your kids. Whisper a healing spell over your mother's aching joints. Then head out to the temple to ask the priests if your neighbor just hexed your goat. And all of this, yes, all of it, is considered completely normal. It's magical, yes, but also terrifying. Because the same force that can help a woman give birth can also turn you into a cursed spirit stuck in a tomb for eternity. And no, you probably wouldn't survive your first day. Let's be honest, between the sacred crocodiles, burning suns, and surprise afterlife judgment panels, ancient Egypt was not for the spiritually unprepared.
So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here.
And while you're at it, hop down to the comments and tell me what city are you listening from and what time is it right now. I love knowing who's tuning in from which corner of the world, especially if you're listening at some ungodly hour like 3:33 a.m. You brave soul. Because tonight we'll walk beside pharaohs and priests, explore the dusty halls of forbidden spells, and whisper ancient names not meant for the living, all wrapped in soft sound and slow breath. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. All right, the lights are low, the fan's humming like a sleepy old sphinx, and you're drifting mentally. Anyway, somewhere along the shimmering banks of the Nile, you smell the heat. Not the modern asphalt and car exhaust kind, but that ancient kind, baked stone, sun-warmed papyrus, and river mist thick with secrets. And in this heat, the air is alive, not with Wi-Fi or mosquitoes, but with magic, real magic. Not the pull a rabbit from a hat kind, but the Heka kind, cosmic, chaotic, holy, and just a little terrifying. You see, if you were born in ancient Egypt, magic wasn't a cute hobby or a side hustle. It was the operating system of the universe. Magic made the sun rise, kept the Nile flooding on schedule, and stopped your neighbor's jealous stank eye from turning your crops into a pile of crunchy sadness. They called it Heka, and no, it's not a trendy yoga drink or a new crypto coin. Heka was life force magic, the spiritual power baked into the very bones of existence. Imagine if electricity, divine will, karma, Siri, and glitter were all rolled into one invisible force that ran the cosmos. That's Heka, and everyone used it. Not just priests and wizards with cool eyeliner. Every single person from the pharaoh with his golden crook to the fishmonger lady yelling at her kids by the reed boats believed in and used Heka. In fact, creation itself, yeah, that only happened because the gods used magic. Let that sink in. The universe wasn't built by brute force or spreadsheets. It was literally spoken into existence by divine spell work. If you're hearing echoes of Let There Be Light from other traditions, you're not wrong. Ancient Egyptian magic said words power, Every syllable could shake the heavens or butter your bread, depending on how you pronounced it. Now, imagine you're one of those early priests. Let's call you Hotep. You've got a shaved head, a very uncomfortable-looking linen kilt, and you're standing on temple steps at sunrise, staff in hand, chanting spells so the freaking sun doesn't forget to rise. No pressure, right? And here's where it gets juicy. Unlike modern ideas of magic that are often shoved into fantasy novels or late-night tarot readings, Egyptian Heka wasn't separate from religion or science. It was the engine behind both. The gods themselves used it. The pharaoh embodied it. The scribes wrote it down in dazzling hieroglyphs that practically hummed with energy. Even your grandma probably muttered a charm over your tea when you had a cough. That brings us to the Nile. Oh boy, the Nile. This river wasn't just a glorified water feature. It was a living, breathing god being, pulsing with seasonal rhythms and divine juice. Every year, like clockwork, it would rise up and flood the surrounding lands with nutrient-rich silt that made the ground go from dusty hellscape to green fantasy buffet. But to the Egyptians, this wasn't just some neat irrigation trick. It was resurrection in action. You could practically hear the ancient farmers. Ah yes, Osiris is back again. Bless him, and look, the barley's feeling frisky. They literally believed the Nile's flooding was part of the death and rebirth cycle of the gods. Osiris, the king of the dead and ultimate plant dad, was murdered, chopped up, and floated down the Nile, only to be reassembled, thanks to magic, obviously, by his brilliant goddess wife Isis. And every year, the river's flood mirrored that divine drama: death, dismemberment, rebirth, bread. Heka ran through it all like melted gold. So yeah, water wasn't just wet, it was charged. Imagine standing at the river's edge. You dip your fingers in, and it's cool, dark, whispering. The current hums like it knows your name. Frogs croak a lazy rhythm in the reeds. Papyrus plants sway like shy dancers. And somewhere far off, temple bells chime, smoke rising in elegant curls into the painted sky. You can almost hear the Nile speaking to you, low and thick, like a grandfather who's seen too much and remembers every single spell ever cast on its banks. That's the thing about the ancient Egyptians. They didn't just live next to the mystical. They lived inside it. Everything had a spirit, a whisper, a will. You didn't just eat bread. You broke a sacred offering, made possible by reborn Osiris. You didn't just go to the doctor. You visited a priest with a recipe that involved honey, crocodile dung, and at least 3 amulets, because healing without magic, that's just asking for trouble. You didn't even just walk through your own house. You probably stepped over protective figurines buried under the threshold, scaring off evil spirits like magical doormats. Wipe your feet and leave your curses outside, thank you very much. And this belief, this daily dance with divine power, wasn't weird, it was expected. You were supposed to know how to throw up a quick protection spell when you got bad vibes. You were supposed to chant the names of dangerous gods just right, so they didn't eat your soul. You were supposed to respect the balance, because the whole Egyptian worldview was built on this gorgeous, fragile idea of Ma'at, cosmic order, harmony, truth. Picture the world as a giant feather-balanced seesaw, with Ma'at keeping everything level. Heka was the glue holding that balance in place. And when things went sideways, drought, plague, your cat getting possessed, it meant someone somewhere had messed up the magic. Can you blame them for being a little obsessive? Honestly, I think we still do this. Ever knock on wood, carry a lucky charm, or talk to the universe when you really need a parking space? Congratulations, you're using your own modern Heka. But back in ancient Egypt, it wasn't just superstition, it was science, politics, religion, medicine, cosmology, and all of it tied back to that silent, invisible force humming beneath everything, the magic behind the curtain. And look, not all of it was sunshine and healing balms. Heka could be dark, spiteful, dangerous. Ever tried to get rid of a vengeful ghost who keeps knocking your bread off the shelf? The Egyptians had protocols for that. Spoiler, it involves fire, amulets, and yelling. A lot. But we'll get to the spooky stuff later. For now, just sit with this idea. Every sunrise, every flood, every heartbeat, every spell scrawled in ink or carved in stone was Heka living magic, whispering through the reeds, curling in the incense smoke, thrumming beneath your feet as you walked a path laid down by gods. And when you truly believed in it, it wasn't just around you, it was in you, flowing through your bones like sunlight through a temple window. So tell me, if you lived in ancient Egypt, would you be a high priest casting spells to keep the world turning, or a street vendor murmuring blessings into your lentils? Or maybe just a wide-eyed listener, like now, soaking in the weird, wonderful magic of it all? Because I promise you this, the Nile still whispers, the ancient names still hum beneath the sands, and the magic, oh yeah, it's still here, just waiting for someone new to listen. Alright, you're still with me, which means the magic's working. The Nile is behind us now, shimmering like a dream you barely remember, and we're stepping into something even more ancient. Yeah, we're going cosmic, we're talking divine, we're talking how magic made the universe, and I don't mean in a poetic Hallmark card kind of way. You are now standing in primordial darkness, floating in a place before places existed. No time, no space, no TikTok trends, just an endless, watery abyss called new. This was the OG chaos soup, the broth of creation. Imagine the deepest ocean you've ever seen. Now add stars, vibes, and zero rules. Then, suddenly, boom, a god speaks. That is how the Egyptians said the world began. Not with a bang, not with a chemical reaction, but with a word. One sacred utterance, soaked in Heka, ripples through the void, and just like that, order is born. Land rises like a sandbar in a dream. Light splits the darkness. The first sunrise ever happens, and somewhere in the heavens, ancient deities start stretching and checking their calendars. Let's be real. This is way cooler than Let There Be Light. Because in ancient Egypt, the gods weren't just creators. They were performers of cosmic magic. They wielded Heka, like the world's most powerful Wi-Fi connection, and every time they breathed, spoke, or even blinked too hard, reality rearranged itself. And leading this divine orchestra, the sun god Ra, or Atum, depending on which version you're reading. Look, Egyptian mythology had more plot lines than the MCU. Atum, sometimes called the self-created one, basically magicked himself into existence using pure Heka. He didn't need parents, or a lab, or a womb. He just was. You gotta respect that kind of confidence. So Atum appears, glowing like an eternal sunset, and he starts the divine family business by sneezing, or spitting out his children, Shu, Aaron, Tefnut, moisture. Not metaphorically, like literally. One mighty sneeze, and suddenly we've got weather patterns. From there, the gods start multiplying like enchanted bunnies. You get Geb Earth and Nut Sky, who are deeply into each other despite being forcefully separated by their dad. We'll get into that soap opera later, their kids. Oh, just Osiris, Isis, Set, and Nephthys, the A-listers of the Egyptian pantheon. And what glues all these divine personalities together, what fuels their powers, and protects their cosmic drama from unraveling into nothingness. You guessed it. Heka. This was the engine running behind the scenes, like a magical power grid humming beneath every temple and tomb. And because the gods created the world with Heka, they couldn't function without it. Which brings us to one of the most underappreciated yet hardcore deities in Egyptian lore, Heka the god. That's right. Heka wasn't just a force. It was also a personified deity. Kind of like if gravity suddenly stood up, put on sandals, and started handing out business cards. Heka is usually shown as a man holding two serpents, standing beside or behind other gods like, yeah, I'm the reason this works. No big deal. He doesn't get flashy temples or scandalous myths, but make no mistake, he was essential, like duct tape for reality, or caffeine for civilization. And then there's his co-star, the divine Cobra Queen herself, Weret Heka, whose name literally means Grade of Magic. She's the snake goddess of protective spells, often seen curled around pharaohs, like a living crown. You ever see a cobra flaring its hood and think, that's terrifying but somehow elegant? That's her whole vibe. In fact, where Tetzcow often was the crown, her serpent form decorated the headdress of kings, whispering magic and warding off bad juju with every breath. Think of her as magical antivirus software wrapped around the royal brainstem. So yeah, Egyptian magic was deeply divine. But here's where things get spicy. The pharaoh wasn't just using magic. He was magic. Let me say that again, because it's bonkers. The pharaoh wasn't just a king. He was a walking, talking conduit of Heka, plugged straight into the source code of the universe. When the pharaoh made a decree, it wasn't because I said so. It was because I am channeling the cosmic laws that hold back chaos, and if you argue, the sun might not rise tomorrow. Big Leo energy. That's why he wore those snake crowns, carried those crook and flail combos, and performed annual rituals to ensure the Nile flooded, the sun rose, and reality didn't collapse into screaming lizard demons. And one of the most spectacular moments in this divine drama was what I like to call the golden hour of magic, the Pharaoh sunrise ritual. Now imagine this. It's dawn. The desert is chilly and echoing. You're standing in a colossal stone temple with towering columns carved like bundles of lotus. Everything smells like incense and morning dew. You hear footsteps. Enter the pharaoh. He's in full ceremonial regalia. Golden sandals, leopard skin cloak, staff crowned with a serpent head. His eyes are lined with kohl, not just for looks but for protection, because demons hate dramatic eyeliner. He approaches the altar, faces east, raises his staff, and begins to chant. These aren't ordinary words. Each syllable is soaked in thousands of years of cosmic weight. He's speaking in the sacred tongue of the gods, calling on Heka to make the sun rise once more. And just as his voice crescendos, bam, the first rays of Ram crest the horizon, spilling over the temple like molten fire. The crowd gasps. Somewhere in the reeds, a crocodile nods in approval. You're witnessing the renewal of the universe, and it happens every single day. Because without the pharaoh's magic, the world risks slipping back into chaos. It's like if your morning alarm clock had to fight a chaos demon before waking you up. Kinda makes your daily commute feel tame, huh? But here's the catch. This wasn't just symbolic. Egyptians believed that if the pharaoh didn't perform the sunrise rituals, if he skipped a chant or botched a step, the sun might literally not rise. Chaos might win. Apep, the serpent, would eat the daylight. Game over. So yeah, the stakes were a little higher than your average yoga class. Now, let's not forget, you're not watching this happen. You're imagining it. And that's the point. Because Egyptian magic wasn't meant to be passively observed. It was meant to be felt, experienced, lived. The chants, the incense, the golden statues, they were all immersive sensory tools, kind of like ancient VR. The temple wasn't just a sacred place, it was a cosmic interface. So let me ask you, if you were standing in that temple, feeling the power of Heka pouring through the stone, would you kneel in awe? Or would you try a little spell of your own? Don't worry, we'll get to those later. But for now, just know this. Magic didn't come from a wand. It didn't sparkle like glitter. It came from the divine breath that shaped the stars. And every time the pharaoh spoke at sunrise, the universe listened. Because in the beginning, before there was light, before there was land, there was only Heka, and it whispered the world into being. You've made it this far, and trust me, it only gets weirder from here. So now that you've survived the Pharaoh's sunrise karaoke and cosmic snake deities, let's shift from the majestic temples and golden crowns to something a little more everyday. Because here's the magical twist. Ancient Egyptian life wasn't just about divine rituals in ivory towers. Nope, magic didn't stay locked away with the elite. It was baked right into the bricks of the villages, tucked into baskets of figs, woven into linen tunics, and whispered through crowded marketplaces. If you lived in ancient Egypt, you weren't just watching the magical world, you were an active participant. Every cough, every dream, every weird bump on your leg, that was a magical situation needing a magical solution. So let's take a little walk, shall we? You step off the gleaming steps of the temple into the warm, dusty pulse of a city. The smell hits you first. Spices, baked bread, sun-dried fish, and that particular scent of clay that's been kissed by 10,000 sunrises. Chickens are squawking, children are chasing each other, kicking up sand, and over there, just beyond the goats, a woman is haggling for something that looks suspiciously like a bundle of enchanted papyrus. Welcome to everyday magic. Welcome to the world of Heka, for the people. Let's talk roles. First up, the priests. These weren't just temple bureaucrats keeping the incense budget in check. They were the big guns of magic, trained not just in ceremony, but in practical spells. A priest might be blessing amulets one day and mixing a potion for someone's gallbladder the next. Honestly, think of them as a blend of therapist, exorcist, and pharmacist with a serious robe game. Then you've got the Sa amulet makers. These were the artisans of defense magic, crafting protective tokens for everything from childbirth to crocodile attacks. Their stalls in the market? Literal walls of tiny miracles, eye-shaped pendants, serpent coils, chunks of lapis lazuli inscribed with words no one said aloud, unless they had really good insurance. Next to them, you'd find the Sanu doctors. But don't let the title fool you. These guys were just as mystical as the priests. Ancient Egyptian medicine was a full-on combo meal of herbs and Heka. You didn't just take a salve and call it a day. You chanted over it. You maybe spat on it. You possibly rubbed it on a frog statue and buried it under a fig tree during a waxing moon while yelling at a demon to leave your intestines alone. And if that sounds ridiculous, remember, we still used chicken soup and essential oils and talked to our plants. You tell me what's more magical, calling on Bastet to bless your womb or using lavender oil because your friend's cousin swears it helps with your love life. Speaking of wombs, let's talk childbirth. Now, if you've ever been near a delivery room, you know it's part miracle, part chaos, and part screaming into the void. The ancient Egyptians felt the same, so they stacked that situation with Ale the magical reinforcements. Enter Tolerant, the hippo goddess. Yes, you heard that right. She's part hippo, part lion, part crocodile, and somehow still the patron saint of childbirth. I mean, she looks like a Build-A-Beast workshop exploded, but Egyptian moms loved her. She was fierce, protective, and absolutely terrifying to demons. Think of her as a magical bouncer for your womb. Alongside her came Besso, the lion-faced dwarf god. Bessus had a big beard, a big belly, a tongue that was always sticking out, and the attitude of a grumpy uncle who's also secretly a superhero. He was loud, he was ugly, and that's exactly how people liked it, because demons hated his guts. Bess would dance, shout, and shake a tambourine just to scare off evil spirits from your newborn, the ultimate magical hype man. Now let's talk about the swag. Amulets. You couldn't walk 10 steps in Egypt without bumping into some kind of protective bling. Expectant mothers wore wands carved from hippo ivory, covered in fierce creatures and stars. Kids wore protective pendants, shaped like lions, frogs, or the Eye of Horus. Even hairpins could double as demon repellent if carved just right. If your neighbor's kid sneezed weird, you didn't grab tissues, you grabbed a charm, and maybe a spell involving onions, honey, and yelling at the wind. And the market, oh, the market was alive with it. You'd hear chants echoing between the booths. Someone's buying a fertility charm. Someone else is trading a dried lizard wrapped in linen for a potion that makes your husband stop gambling. Everyone's side-eyeing the old lady who sells love spells that maybe also turn people into frogs. Who can say? It's noisy, it's bustling, it smells like spices and fear and incense. And under it all, there's a buzz, a pulse of belief that connects every buyer, seller, priest, and shopper. Because in ancient Egypt, you didn't wait for the gods to solve your problems. You summoned their power through rituals, relics, and well-placed bribes of bread and beer. Now, let's not sugarcoat this. Sometimes, you needed a little darker magic. Say you woke up feeling off. You're sweating. You've got dreams of talking lizards and feel like something's sitting on your chest, whispering in Akkadian. Ancient demon talk, very out of place. Well, congratulations. You might have a foreign spirit squatting in your gut, like an unwelcome Airbnb guest. The Egyptians were all over this. You'd go see a healer who would inspect your symptoms, mutter a few phrases, maybe spit on a pottery shard. Seriously, saliva was big, and then pronounce that your spleen has been hexed by an invisible Syrian demon. The solution? A combination of sympathetic magic and terrifying threats. Maybe they'd rub crocodile dung on your stomach. No, really, it was a thing. Maybe they'd write the demon's name on a statue, snap its legs off, and bury it next to a barking dog. Maybe they'd yell at the air in a specific tone that only ghosts could hear. And just like that, you're cured, or at least very confused and slightly traumatized. But that's the beauty of Egyptian healing magic. It was never just about the body. It was about your soul, your energy, your connection to the divine matrix of the cosmos. A bellyache wasn't just digestion. It was a spiritual imbalance that needed Heka. And if all else failed, you wrote it down. Because remember, in ancient Egypt, words weren't just words, they were spells. Writing a name gave you power over it. Inscribing a prayer made it real. That's why so many healing spells and incantations were written on papyri, painted on bowls, etched into walls, or chanted aloud like holy passwords to the universe. Imagine going to CVS, getting your meds, and also receiving a scroll that reads, "You who walk with sand in your sandals, depart now from this gut, you foul vapor of chaos." Honestly, I'd try it. Now, take a breath. Seriously. Feel the cool breeze of the Nile in your imagination. Smell the mix of myrrh, roasted barley, and faint magic sizzling in the air. Picture yourself wrapped in a golden glow, a protective light you can almost feel, as if the gods themselves are watching from behind the stars. Because that's how the Egyptians lived every day, with one foot in the marketplace, one foot in the mystic realm. Life and magic weren't separate. They were one thing, one radiant, chaotic, sacred thing. And whether you were a priest in a temple or a baker kneading dough with a prayer to Sekhmet, you were part of that dance. The rhythm of Heka throbbed through every corner of society. It was medicine, mystery, and everyday defense mechanism rolled into one. So the next time you light a candle, wear a lucky necklace, or whisper, "Please don't let me bomb this Zoom meeting," remember, you're still part of that same ancient magical lineage. You are a modern practitioner of everyday Heka. The gods would be proud, and probably very confused by your phone. "Oh, you made it back. Good, because we're about to get dark. Like shadowy corners of the pyramid, whispering through the sand, goosebumps on your soul kind of dark. Because as much as the ancient Egyptians loved their healing spells and cuddly hippo goddesses, they were also terrified of what happened when magic went rogue, when Heka was twisted. Welcome to the shadow realm of ancient Egyptian sorcery, the land of curses, vengeance, vengeful ghosts, and full-blown magical beefs. This was Heka's dark side, baby. Buckle up. So let's say you're an average, hard-working Egyptian. You pay your taxes in grain, you honor the gods, you keep your ambulance charged, and boom, some jerk curses you. Just like that, your cattle die, your hair falls out, your beer goes sour, your sandals always break at the worst possible time, and your dreams full of whispering teeth. What do? You go to the authorities. That's what. No, not the police. I'm talking about the magicians who specialized in curses and counter curses. These people were part sorcerer, part hitman, part paranormal lawyer. And they had rituals that would make your Netflix horror queue look like a kindergarten sing-along. Let's talk about the execration texts. You ever been mad at someone? Like, "I wish their Wi-Fi never connects again." Mad? Now imagine you had access to ancient Egyptian ritual magic. Here's how it would go. Step 1. You write your enemy's name on a clay pot. Sometimes just their name. Sometimes a very detailed list. Like Tefnut, son of annoying goat breeder, who stole my chicken, betrayed my cousin, and smells like spoiled fish. Step 2. You draw a little stick figure of them, just enough to make the gods recognize who you're gunning for. Step 3. You smash that pot into pieces, preferably with great enthusiasm. You might stomp on it, throw it in a fire, or bury it at a crossroads while reciting something that sounds suspiciously like a rap battle verse. Because in Egyptian belief, writing someone's name gave you power over them. Breaking that name stabbing that name, burying it with snakes. Those weren't just gestures, they were actions of magical annihilation. And if you wanted to go full drama queen, you'd make a mud figurine of the person. You'd bind its arms and legs, maybe wrap it in red thread, because red chaos, and carve their name across its little chest. Then you'd pour something foul on it, like donkey urine or beer left in the sun for 3 weeks, and leave it to rot in the sun. Or better yet, bury it in a graveyard, right next to some very cranky spirits. Because nothing says I loathe you like magically tethering someone's fate to a festering corpse. Now, this wasn't just personal vendettas. These curses were statecraft. Pharaohs and generals used them on entire enemy armies. They'd write down a list of hostile cities, full-on military targets, and curse them one by one, then break their names in clay, symbolic warfare style. May their horses stumble, may their bread turn to ash, may their sandals snap in the mud of defeat. Boom, instant magical artillery. But while you're busy hexing people, here's a cosmic rule you better not forget. What you curse might curse you back. That brings us to the terrifying concept of the moot, troubled spirits of the dead who didn't make it to the afterlife. You know those ghosts in movies that rattle chains, scream in Latin, and show up in bathroom mirrors? Yeah, the Egyptians had those, but older and way angrier. These were the souls of people who died without proper rites, or were wrongfully buried, or were cursed so hard in life that they couldn't move on. They'd haunt the living, bring disease, ruin crops, cause bad dreams, and sometimes possess the body of your donkey. Yes, possession wasn't just for people. There's even this chilling little bit of spellcraft where a sorcerer takes a lock of hair from a corpse and ties it to the hair of the living person they want to torment. Boom, spiritual tether. Now the living person can't sleep, can't breathe right, and might start seeing jackal-headed phantoms at lunchtime. Sounds awful, right? But here's the twist. You didn't always have to be cursed to be cursed. Tomb robbers, I'm looking at you. Now, I don't know who needs to hear this, but stealing from an ancient Egyptian tomb is a bad idea. Those people did not mess around when it came to protecting their grave goods. Forget booby traps and rolling boulders. They cursed their walls. You'd walk into a tomb, torch in hand, and the first thing you'd see isn't treasure. It's an inscription that reads something like, "Anyone who disturbs this tomb shall have their soul devoured by the crocodile-headed demon. May their heart be eaten. May their name be forgotten. May their cat never love them again." Spicy stuff. One of the most famous examples comes from the tomb of Jehuti-Hup, whose warning carved into stone says something along the lines of, "As for any scribe, commoner, or fool who does evil in this tomb, they will submit to the wrath of Thoth." Thoth, by the way, is the god of writing, wisdom, and moonlit vengeance, not someone you want on your bad side. He's basically a divine librarian with a grudge, and he's got receipts. And yes, if you're wondering whether the so-called curse of the pharaoh on Tutankhamun's tomb comes from this tradition, oh, it totally does. When British archaeologists busted into that tomb in 1922, people started dropping dead in weird, dramatic ways. Snake bites, blood poisoning, sudden fevers. Cue the tabloids screaming about the mummy's curse. And while science has its own explanations, hello ancient mold spores, there's no denying the vibe was intense. That's the power of belief, and that's the power of a well-written magical threat. Now imagine this. Deep in the desert, wind howling, stars wheeling above you, you come across a broken figurine. Its face is carved with a name. Its limbs are cracked. Its tiny mouth is stuffed with a dog's tooth, a ritual meant to silence the dead. You'd feel it, wouldn't you? That icy breath on your neck, that watching sensation. Yeah, that's the old magic, still lingering. And here's the best part. It wasn't all doom and gloom. The Egyptians understood the dark side of Heka, not just to wield it, but to defend against it. They weren't obsessed with curses because they loved chaos. They were obsessed because they wanted order. They wanted Ma'at, the cosmic balance to hold firm. And that meant recognizing when someone tried to flip the board. So they developed counter curses, wards, protective rituals, guardian amulets, and spells designed to reflect evil back to the sender. Like a divine no-oo. They'd literally write, "May this curse bounce back like a mirror onto the mouth that spoke it." Ancient Egypt, inventing the magical Uno reverse card. So let's leave this dark corner with a deep breath. Inhale. Imagine all the ancient negativity, jealousy, hatred, vengeance, gathering like a shadowy cloud. Now, exhale. Feel it blow away, like desert sand in a morning breeze. You're left standing in calm sunlight. The Nile is far off. The gods are silent for now. Peace, once again, is restored. Because that's what they always hoped for. Even when dabbling in darkness, the goal was always balance. So next time someone says, "Don't speak ill of the dead," remember, it's not just about being polite. It might be about not waking something that still remembers its name and knows yours. You made it back from the curse zone. Impressive, but we're not done yet. Tonight, we close our eyes and let the world fall silent, because now we follow the soul. Yeah, it's time. You've taken your last breath in ancient Egypt. The linen is being wrapped tight around your limbs. The chants begin. The incense smokes like ancient memory. And suddenly, boom, you're weightless. You've officially crossed over into the realm of the dead. And listen, my friend, this is not your standard heaven or hell situation. Oh no, ancient Egyptians turned the afterlife into a magical obstacle course, complete with crocodile-headed judges, cursed doors, and riddle-spitting gatekeepers who really don't care how good your resume was. This wasn't just death. This was the journey. Now first things first. Your soul? Yeah, it's not a single glowing orb like in a Disney movie. The Egyptians broke the soul down into multiple parts, each with its own vibe, its own power, and its own job. You had the Ka, your life force, like your spiritual battery pack. The Ka was basically your cosmic twin. When you died, it didn't vanish. It just needed snacks and offerings to keep hanging around. Dead or not, Ka still hungry. Then there was the Bod, your personality. Imagine your Bod as your spiritual selfie. It had wings, could fly, and had your head. It fluttered around, visiting places and people you loved in life, maybe even checking in on your dog. The Ba was social, curious, possibly nosy. And finally, there was the Af, your radiant, transfigured self, your divine form. If everything went well and you passed all the tests, the Af would get VIP access to the afterlife and chill among the stars with the gods. But how did you get there? 2 words: the Book of the Dead. Now, let's be clear, this isn't a single book. It's more like a choose-your-own afterlife adventure, written by priests and tailored for individual souls. Every copy was unique. Think of it as a magical survival manual, a cheat code, and a poetic security pass, all rolled into one, except you had to pay for it, because nothing says eternal peace like custom scrolls, extra charge. Inside, spells, dozens of them, and not for decoration. These were practical instructions for navigating the underworld. You needed a spell to open doors, a spell to not be eaten, a spell to avoid accidentally becoming a goose for eternity. There's even a spell to stop yourself from being forced to work in the afterlife, because apparently ancient Egyptian bureaucracy never ends. Let's break down a few of the greatest hits, shall we? Spell 9, the Path of the Soul. This one is all about guiding your Ba, the fluttery, curious, slightly ADHD part of your spirit through the sky. You recite this to make sure you don't get stuck in some ghostly cul-de-sac on your way to the field of reeds. Spell 89, returning home by night. This one's cozy. You say it when your soul wants to sneak back to the world of the living at night and hang out with the fam, because even in death, Egyptians like to check in. They were basically the world's first ghostly helicopter parents. Spell 98, crossing the celestial ferry. You want to get across the celestial waters. Better hope you've got the right password and can pay the divine ferry captain. Yes, it's as shady as it sounds. This guy has attitude. These spells were often illustrated in gorgeous color, full-on ancient comic books with demons, doors, ladders, flames, cobras, and boats. Lots of boats. You needed serious nautical prep to reach the afterlife. And who was helping you navigate? Anubis, baby. Anubis, the jackal-headed god of embalming, graveyards, and moral judgment. He's the silent, sleek presence beside your coffin. He weighs your heart against the feather of Ma'at. Truth, balance, cosmic harmony. Now here's the kicker. If your heart is heavier than the feather, you don't pass go. You don't collect 200 blessings. You get eaten immediately by a terrifying chimera beast called Amit, a combo platter of crocodile, lion, and hippo, basically nature's most aggressive parts, fused into one spirit-eating monster. Brutal. But if your heart is light, if you were truthful, kind, and kept your magical ducks in a row, you get waved through the gates like a VIP at the most exclusive celestial nightclub ever, the Field of Reeds. Imagine your favorite day on Earth, the perfect weather, endless sunshine, green fields, warm river breezes, fresh bread, your pets are back, your family looks like their younger selves, and there's no rent, no death, no taxes. That's the Field of Reeds. It was the Egyptian version of paradise, not floating on a cloud, not endless harp concerts, just a better version of life, more serene, more magical, no mosquito bites. But getting there wasn't guaranteed. You had to pass the judgment of the dead. Now, imagine this. You're standing in a vast, echoing hall. The air smells like incense and moonlight. Torches flicker. Statues loom. Anubis guides you to the scales of justice, where your heart still beating with the memory of your life is placed on one side. On the other, the feather of Ma'at. Watching from a golden throne is Osiris, the king of the dead green-skinned, regal, wrapped in linen, holding his crook and flail like ancient bling. His eyes glow with eternal memory. And behind him, the 42 assessors. Yes, 42. Each one asks you a question. Not, did you recycle? Or did you pay your taxes? But deeper, stranger. More mystical truths, like, did you steal from the gods? Did you cause unjust pain? Did you cheat the sacred balance? Did you fart in a temple? Okay, not literally, but you get the point. If you answered correctly, if your Ka, Ba, and Shadow were in alignment, then your soul didn't buckle under guilt. You passed. And then, and only then, could you truly live again. But hold up, there's more. Because for all this afterlife intensity, the Egyptians weren't just obsessed with death. They were obsessed with transformation. The point of all this, the scrolls, the spells, the heart weighing, the terrifying chimera lurking nearby, was to elevate your soul, to make you something divine, to literally join the stars. This wasn't a horror story. It was an initiation. Death wasn't an ending. It was a sacred upgrade, like going from dial-up to cosmic broadband. And the rituals, the mummification, the tombs, the protective spells wrapped like little love notes around your organs, that wasn't just superstition, that was engineering, spiritual science, ensuring the soul had everything it needed to pass the test. So next time you hear about the Book of the Dead, don't think of it like some dusty relic. Think of it as the most extra, metaphysical, soul-saving user manual in human history. A guide written by people who stared into the great beyond and said, okay, but what's the checklist? And here's the most beautiful part. Every spell, every ritual, every offering, they all speak to the same deep human hope, that there's something more, that beyond this life, this world, this weird, loud, glorious existence, there's a place of peace, a home, a lightness of being. And if we can live in balance, speak truth, do good, honor life's mysteries, we just might find ourselves there, among the reeds, under starlight, free. You've danced with the gods, floated through the underworld, past cosmic judgment, and touched eternal starlight. You're practically an honorary ancient Egyptian at this point. But now, we're flipping the script. We've seen Heka as divine energy, sacred healer, spiritual GPS. But what happens when that power gets used like a magical crowbar to pry open the universe for revenge?
Yep, you guessed it. We're diving into the Dark Arts Egyptian edition. It's time for shadow spells, unholy rage, and some seriously bad afterlife behavior.
Welcome to the Revenge Magic Department. Population? Spiteful spirits, angry priests, and one too many cursed dolls. Let's start with the oldest and probably creepiest form of magical payback, the execration rituals, but dialed up to petty warlock level. We've talked before about writing someone's name on a clay pot and smashing it, right? Basic curse starter pack. But some of these ancient magical tantrums went way further. Imagine this. It's midnight. You're out in the desert, shivering under a sky so full of stars it makes your bones ache. In front of you, a circle of priests in white linen is muttering prayers not to bless, but to destroy. They're holding figurines, little human shapes made of wax, clay, or even bread dough. Each one has a name scratched across it, an enemy, a rival kingdom, a backstabbing ex-boyfriend who sold you fake sandals, whoever. And what do? They stab the figurine with knives. They bind its arms and legs. They burn it. They spit on it. They urinate on it. Yeah, things got personal. All while chanting things like, "May your limbs fall off. May your voice be lost. May your name be eaten by dogs." Ouch. These weren't casual curses. These were acts of spiritual obliteration, the magical equivalent of erasing someone's save file from the cosmic hard drive. And the goal wasn't just punishment in this life. Oh no. The goal was to ruin their afterlife too. Because in ancient Egypt, that was the ultimate threat, denying someone their rest, preventing them from ever reaching the field of reeds, erasing their name from the great eternal scrolls. To an ancient Egyptian, that was worse than death. Now, let's say the curse worked. The target dies, but something goes wrong. They don't make it to the afterlife. Maybe the rituals were incomplete. Maybe the soul was too angry to move on. Maybe the figurine used had glitter glue on it, and the gods were like, "What is this?" In that case, congrats, you've made a mutt. Not mute like the dog breed. I mean mute, a troubled spirit, an angry dead, an undead Karen with unresolved trauma. Mutant were the ghosts of those who died badly, were buried improperly, or got caught in a curse tornado they couldn't shake. And they were not quiet about it. They haunted the living. Sickness, madness, unexplainable misfortune. You stub your toe 37 times a day, might be a mute. Can't sleep, mute. Woke up with your sandals tied together. That's not the cat. That's a ghost with a grudge. Sometimes these spirits got so desperate they'd possess the living, slide into someone's dreams, suck their energy, ride them like a haunted Vespa. And if you're thinking, cool, so just perform an exorcism, right? Yes, but ancient Egyptian exorcisms weren't your classic holy water and crucifix scenario. These were full-blown ritual battles. You needed spells, specific names of demons, amulets, burning herbs, and probably someone's toenail wrapped in linen. You might even write the mute's name on an onion, smash it, then boil the pieces while chanting threats to send them back to the underworld via Crocodile Express. And sometimes, the mute wasn't just angry. Sometimes, they were bound to this world on purpose. Cue the cursed hair spells. This one is straight out of a horror movie. Here's the basic idea. If you wanted to really mess with someone, you'd find a corpse. Yikes, cut off a lock of its hair, double yikes, and tie it to a lock of your victim's hair. Boom. Spiritual tether. Now, the living person is stuck in a gross, invisible soul chain with a very confused, very cranky dead person. They share dreams, share pain, share mood swings. It's like ghost possession, but messier, more dramatic, and no one's having a good time. You see where this is going? Ancient Egypt wasn't just magical. It was magically savage. And it wasn't just individual revenge. Sometimes curses were used for national protection, like spiritual espionage. Pharaohs commissioned whole curse campaigns against enemy kings. They'd have the enemy's name inscribed on wax dolls, then grind them underfoot as part of mourning rituals. Imagine waking up and squashing a symbolic enemy every day before breakfast. That's some A+ psychological warfare. But revenge magic wasn't just about winning. It was about restoring balance. The Egyptians weren't chaotic by nature. They were obsessed with Ma'at, truth, order, cosmic harmony. So when someone disrupted that balance, lied, murdered, cheated, betrayed, the curse wasn't seen as evil. It was justice, a magical version of court. It's like the universe had a complaint department, and revenge magic was how you filed your grievances. But don't worry, it wasn't all doom and gloom. Egyptians had entire counter-curse systems. If you thought you'd been hexed, you could visit a protective magician. They'd diagnose your symptoms, then prescribe something like drinking water that had a curse scroll dunked in it, bathing in milk mixed with saffron, garlic, and maybe a lizard tail, chanting the name of bees while dancing loudly to drive off spirits. And yes, sometimes just shouting insults at the ghost worked. Ancient exorcism, now with 70% more sass. Eventually, if all else failed, you'd bury a new figurine, this time of yourself with protective spells, basically offering the spirit a decoy. Hey ghost, go haunt this clay me instead. I'm done. Honestly, it's kind of brilliant. So where does that leave us? In a culture that believed words could kill, names could resurrect, and clay figurines held divine power, magic was never just woo-woo fun. It was survival. It was a weapon, a shield, a way to scream into the universe and actually get a reply. So the next time you feel wronged, maybe don't reach for a curse. Reach for balance. Because as the Egyptians knew, revenge is powerful, but it always leaves fingerprints. And Heka remembers. Even in the silence, even in the shadows, even now, you've survived curses, weighed your soul, and dodged more vengeful spirits than a haunted house on Black Friday. Now it's time to take a deep breath, light a little incense, and wait. Don't relax yet. Because even though we've journeyed through darkness, Egyptian magic ends not in terror, but in radiance. Let's wrap up this magical ride with a final drift down the Nile. This time, not with questions or fears, but with a gentle reverence for a civilization that dared to turn existence into something deeply enchanted. So you're lying in bed. The world around you is quiet. The air is still. You can hear the distant hum of nighttime things, wind brushing past leaves, the low hiss of air through vents, maybe your neighbor's cat screaming into the void like an ancient banshee. That part's not sacred. Ignore it. And somewhere in that stillness, something ancient stirs. Because you see, in Egypt, magic was not just an act. It was a presence, a force, a rhythm woven into the bones of the world. It wasn't loud. It didn't always look like lightning bolts or dramatic staves. Often, it was subtle, whispered, felt. It was in the Nile's flood, swelling with promise. In the rising sun, reborn from darkness. In the soft hands of a mother, whispering a protection spell to her child. In the flicker of a flame, as someone spoke the name of a beloved ancestor. The Egyptians believed that life itself was magical, a sacred loop between breath and starlight, clay and spirit, sky and soil. And you're part of that. Because every time you remember these stories, these rituals, these gods, these names, you become a little more than just a modern human scrolling through their phone. You become a bridge, a vessel, a co-creator of memory and meaning. Now I want you to imagine something. The Nile. Yes, again, it's always the Nile. It's night. The sky is so packed with stars, it looks like someone spilled powdered sugar across black silk. The river is slow, wide, and warm. It carries no boats tonight, just dreams. And from that river, golden mist rises. You see figures, not terrifying, not alien, but familiar. A priestess with eyes like midnight. A scribe holding a scroll that glows with ancient ink. A little girl holding a clay hippo, protected by a goddess who growls at nightmares. They look at you, Not as an outsider, not as an intruder, but as someone who remembers. Because by listening, by learning, by laughing and wondering, and even shaking your head like, how did I just hear a whole story about cursed onions? You became a part of this spell, a living part of ancient Heka. And here's the wildest, softest truth. Magic never dies. The clay may crumble, the scrolls may fade, but the intention, the yearning for balance, the hope for healing, the awe at mystery, that lives, it pulses through our stories, our breath, our rituals. So maybe you don't own a serpent staff. Maybe you don't know the secret name of Ra. But when you light a candle, when you say a quiet wish, when you wear something lucky, or talk to your plants, or feel something ancient stir in your bones on a starry night, that's modern Heka.
You're not just remembering magic, you're releasing it.
So as we close tonight's journey, let's do it the Egyptian way, with quiet reverence and a deep exhale into the divine. Feel that calm, warm stillness? That's not just relaxation. That's you floating in the magic of thousands of years of belief, ritual, and cosmic wonder. Now, take one last breath in this sacred space. Let it fill you like the golden light of sunrise spilling across a temple floor. Let it remind you that even in the modern world, with all its noise and nonsense, the ancient river of Heka still flows. And sometimes, all it takes to hear its whisper is to listen. So sleep well, stargazer. May your dreams be guarded by hippo goddesses and lion dwarfs. May your spirit be light as a feather. May your name be remembered sweet and shining in the book of eternity. And until we meet again, may you always find peace in the glow of ancient magic. Good night, and remember, you're not just lying in bed. You're drifting in the embrace of the Nile. You're still here. Wow, you're braver than an ancient Egyptian marching into the Duat without a papyrus map and a backup amulet. Respect. But hang on, don't get too comfy, because now we're about to pull the curtain back on one of the most powerful, least talked about forces in all of ancient Egyptian magic, the word. Yes, I'm talking about speech, language, the act of naming. To the ancient Egyptians, words were magic, literally, not in a poetic way. In a this sentence just summoned a solar deity kind of way. Let that sink in. In our modern world, we're surrounded by words, tweets, texts, comments on YouTube videos, where people somehow turn a cooking tutorial into a heated political debate. Words are cheap now, right? Not in ancient Egypt. There, words were sacred. They were alive, and if you weren't careful with them, they could explode with divine power. You see, Egyptians believed that to name a thing was to control it. Want to bind a demon? You speak its name. Want to protect a newborn? You whisper their name into an amulet and press it to their chest. Want to make sure your soul doesn't evaporate into cosmic soup after death? You better have your name everywhere, carved into your tomb, painted on your sarcophagus, inscribed into every linen bandage of your mummy, tattooed on your pet cat if you can manage it. And if someone erased your name, game over. Erasing someone's name from history, literally scraping it off walls, was the ancient Egyptian equivalent of deleting their soul. Poof, gone. No afterlife for you. It was called damnatio memoriae in Latin centuries later, but the Egyptians were doing it first, and with vengeful style. So how did they make words magical? Well, it all starts with writing. And the Egyptians had not one, not two, but three scripts: hieroglyphic, hieratic, and demotic. But hieroglyphs, those were the A-list celebrities of sacred writing. Each hieroglyph was more than a symbol. It was an entity, a miniature spell, a little graphic portal that channeled power. Take, for example, the Ankh, the hieroglyph that looks like a loop on top of a cross. It didn't just mean life, it radiated life. Seeing it, writing it, carving it, that alone was an act of invocation. Boom, you just blessed the room. Now imagine writing an entire scroll in that language. Yeah, that's a scroll-shaped nuclear reactor of Heka. And these scrolls weren't just tossed around casually. Oh no, they were made from papyrus, handmade, painstakingly prepared, and woven from reeds that grew along the Nile like magical USB cords for the divine. Only scribes trained in the sacred arts could craft these texts, and they weren't just writers. They were high-ranking magicians. Think less secretary and more sorcerer with a fountain pen. These scribes would copy powerful spells, hymns and incantations line by line, using black ink for the body and red ink called magic red for the words of power, because color mattered. Oh yes, red was used for names of dangerous entities: serpents, chaos gods, demons, curses. Why? Because red was the color of blood, of power, of warning. It was the magical equivalent of underlining something in fire. Now here's where it gets spicy. A scribe didn't even have to say the spell aloud. Simply writing it down could set it in motion. Silent Heka, written incantations acting like spiritual software, running in the background. Wild, right? But if you wanted the real fireworks, you spoke the spell. Because sound was creation itself. In Egyptian myth, the god Ptah, yes, Ptah, not to be confused with pita bread, created the entire universe by speaking it into being. Not with his hands, not with a hammer, with words. He thought of the world in his heart. Then he spoke it aloud, and boom, reality spawned. This wasn't a metaphor to them. This was a cosmic operating system. Want something to exist? Name it. Want something to disappear? Unname it. Want to control the forces of nature? Better learn the secret syllables that twist time and turn sand into stars. And let's not forget the utterly terrifying idea of secret names. Every god had their public name, but they also had a true name, a hidden name, locked away in the deepest corners of the divine. And if you knew that name, you had leverage. The most famous story about this comes from the goddess Isis, who wanted to gain power equal to the sun god Ra. She knew she couldn't just ask him to scoot over on the divine throne. So what did she do? She got sneaky. She created a magical serpent from Ra's own spit, gross but resourceful, had it bite him, and then said, "O mighty Ra, tell me your true name so I can heal you." And Ra, sweating, writhing, foaming at the mouth, from divine venom, finally gave in and whispered his secret name to Isis. Guess what? Boom! Suddenly, Isis wasn't just a powerful goddess. She was next-level cosmic royalty, all because of a single word, a name. That's the level we're playing at here, folks. So how does this affect us today? Well, think about how we still use words to cast microspells in daily life. We say "I love you," and suddenly, someone's whole emotional reality shifts. We say "you got the job," and someone's entire future rewires in real time. We say, "I'm sorry," or "goodbye," or "I forgive you," or "your pizza's ready," and those words carry weight, meaning, change. That's Heka, modern style. It's not about snake-headed wands or golden scrolls, though let's be honest, those are cool too. It's about understanding that language holds power. So when the Egyptians wrote the names of the deceased on tomb walls, it wasn't for decoration, it was life insurance, a magical receipt for continued existence, a password to eternity. And when someone cursed their enemies by writing their names, smashing their names, or drowning them in ink, that wasn't just symbolic, that was warfare, linguistic combat. We live in a time of tweets, texts, emojis, and hashtags, but deep down, we still use words the same way, to shape the world, to call things into being, to change ourselves, to bless, to curse, to create. So the next time you speak, remember, your words are spells. Your voice is magic. And every name you say, yours included, echoes in the halls of the unseen. Now take a breath. Let it out. Whisper your own name, quietly into the air. Feel that. You've just invoked yourself. Now that's power. And the ancients, they'd nod in approval and say, "Yeah, you get it. Welcome to the Temple of Language, my friend. You're officially one of the scribes now. You're walking, barefoot. The ground is warm, almost humming with memory. Beneath your feet lies sand. Yes, but also history, thousands of years of it. You feel it like static on your skin. Ancient power still simmering just beneath the surface. And then you see it. Not a pyramid, not a temple, but a market. Yup, a dusty, noisy, gloriously chaotic Egyptian marketplace. Because while pharaohs built colossal tombs and priests summoned divine magic in hushed sanctuaries, regular folks, they were out here slinging cucumbers, haggling over beer, and yep, buying spells and amulets like it was Black Friday at a mystical garage sale. That's what we're diving into now. Heka in everyday life. You see, in ancient Egypt, magic wasn't separate from daily routine. It was the routine. It filled the cracks between birth and death, mealtimes and marriages, hangovers and hauntings. People didn't just believe in Heka, they lived in it. And this wasn't abstract, philosopher in a temple stuff. This was boots on the ground magic. Let's start with the MVPs of this magical economy, the Sao and the Sunu. The Sov, pronounced like Sov, were magical artisans, amulet makers. Think Etsy, but ancient and actually effective. The Sun were physicians, but not like take 2 herbs and call me in the morning. These folks were doctors and spellcasters. Your local clinic probably had a wand in the back. And let me tell you, their services were in hot demand. Picture the scene. A woman walks into the marketplace, her toddler strapped to her back, sweat glistening on her brow, eyes scanning for that stall with the carved hippos. She's not shopping for toys. She's looking for protection. Because raising a kid in ancient Egypt, that was next level risky. There were illnesses, insects, demons, bad dreams, bad vibes, and probably that one neighbor who gave everyone the evil eye. So what did she do? She went straight to the magic shop, the Say behind the stall, his beard dusted with incense ash, his fingers stained with lapis pigment, nods at her and asks the ancient equivalent of, "What are we guarding against today?" She might ask for an amulet of Tauret, the hippo-headed goddess of childbirth. Imagine a pregnant river hippo with a lion's paws and a crocodile's tail, basically the ancient Egyptian version of a mama bear with turbo mode. Her job? Keep babies safe. And she didn't mess around. Or maybe she wants the image of Bes, the wild-eyed, dwarf-shaped deity of mirth and protection. Bes had a huge beard, wore a feathered headdress, and looked like someone's tipsy uncle, but he scared off demons with his chaotic energy. How? By dancing. Yes, literally. He danced, yelled, made silly faces, and stuck out his tongue to frighten evil spirits. The ultimate nope energy. People wore amulets with his face. They carved his image into bedposts, mirrors, even eyeliner containers. Because nothing says sweet dreams like a tiny dwarf god throwing spiritual punches in your subconscious. And that's not all. Let's say you were feeling sick. You go to the Sanu, and he'd hit you with a treatment that was part herbal remedy, part magical recitation, and part theatrical drama. For example, you've got a bellyache? The Sanu might give you a mixture of honey, ground dates, and powdered crocodile poop. Yum. Then chant a spell about banishing the demon of indigestion, who naturally was imagined as a foreign invader with bad breath and poor manners. Or maybe you're worried about nightmares. There's a spell for that too. You drink a potion brewed with milk, honey, and something called black soil of Upper Egypt, then sleep with a magic wand under your pillow. Yes, Egyptians had wands, usually made of hippo ivory, carved with protective animals like snakes and frogs. They were curved, like a crescent moon. Holding one made you feel like a magical conductor, ready to orchestrate a cosmic lullaby. Even scribes, the nerds of ancient Egypt, carried protective charms, because writing down curses and spells all day long, risky business. You don't want a sentence to accidentally turn on you. Now, let's talk about the vibes. Walking through the marketplace, the air smelled of myrrh, dust and garlic. Colorful stalls displayed beads of turquoise and carnelian, trays of dried herbs, feathers, clay jars sealed with wax, and tiny figurines wrapped in red string. You'd hear chants in the background, not loud, just murmured, rhythmic. Heka doesn't like being screamed. Every stall had stories, like the one selling demon traps, small flasks filled with Nile water, sealed with wax, and inscribed with a prayer. You'd bury one under your house, and it would trap malevolent spirits trying to sneak in through your bathroom. Or the vendor with a bundle of reeds tied together with red twine claimed to have been blessed by a temple priest after witnessing a lunar eclipse. Translation: buy this or the moon might judge you. But people didn't just use magic reactively. They used it proactively. Want good luck in a job interview? Okay, probably more like offering presentation to the temple manager. There was a spell for confidence and eloquence. Want your cow to get pregnant? Spell for that. Want to seduce someone? Oh yes, definitely spells for that. The ancient Egyptians were thirsty and not subtle. There were incantations for attraction involving lotus petals, honey, and sandalwood that made you smell irresistible, and spells that promised to make your beloved burn with desire like Set burns with rage. Hot. And let's not forget dream magic. If you wanted an answer from the gods, you didn't write a letter. You went to a dream temple, slept on a sacred bed, and hoped for a divinely sponsored dream vision. This was called incubation, like spiritual Airbnb, But instead of mints on the pillow, you got cosmic prophecies. So yeah, the magic wasn't just for the elite. It was everywhere. And that's what made Egyptian society so different. To them, the divine wasn't locked in the heavens or trapped in a scroll. It was in your garden, in your kitchen fire, in your kid's toy hippo, in the charm braided into your hair. Magic wasn't belief. It was biology. It was how the world worked. And the fact that we're still here, thousands of years later, talking about these rituals, these amulets, these funky little gods with weird hair and great vibes, that proves it worked. Because you're listening. Because the magic survived. And just maybe, it's still hanging around. In the cracks between your thoughts. In that moment, before you fall asleep. In the breeze that makes the candle flicker when you haven't opened a window. So next time you're in a crowd, stressed out, anxious about the future, remember, somewhere deep in your spiritual bloodstream is the memory of a woman clutching a hippo charm to her chest, whispering ancient names into the wind. And that is magic too. Let's step one more time into that sun-drenched, incense-laced dreamscape of ancient Egypt. Because this time, we're not in a temple, or a marketplace, or the underworld. We're somewhere way more sacred. We're in your house, your home, and specifically, your bedroom, your kitchen, your hallway where your pet cat keeps knocking over oil lamps because it thinks it's divine. It might be. Who are we to argue? Welcome to the household Heka, the protective, practical, and sometimes delightfully weird everyday magic that infused the homes of ancient Egyptians. You see, in Egypt, your home wasn't just 4 mud brick walls and a palm roof. It was a living ritual space. Every corner had magical potential. Every object had symbolic power. Every action could become a spell. Let's talk thresholds for starters. The front door, not just a place to kick off your sandals and yell, "I'm home." It was a magical portal. The Egyptians believed that bad spirits, evil winds, chaos entities, nosy dead relatives loved sneaking in through doors. So they decorated them with apotropaic images, basically magical, no soliciting signs. Bias was a popular doorman. His mug, fierce, goofy, wide-eyed, was carved or painted on lintels and doorposts to frighten off anything with creepy intentions. Think of him as your magical ring camera, but wearing a feathered crown and occasionally sticking out his tongue for dramatic effect. And then, once you walked inside, you entered a universe of micro-magic. Let's start with the kitchen, aka the alchemical lab of the home. Cooking wasn't just feeding the family, it was ritual. Spices and oils were magical ingredients, carefully chosen to balance heat, moisture, body, and spirit. Garlic, not just good for flavor, it warded off illness. Onions, protective and purifying. Salt, used to dry meat and banish spirits, because even the dead hate a salt rub apparently. Some women even murmured short incantations while stirring soup. Seriously, stir 3 times for health, 1 for love. Sound familiar? Yeah, that's because this is basically the proto-witchcraft cookbook. Now, over in the bedroom, things got extra magical. Dreams were serious business. Dreams were where gods sent messages, ancestors whispered secrets, and demons tried to ruin your REM cycle. To sleep peacefully, Egyptians pulled out all the stops. They'd place ivory wands, curved like crescent moons, beneath or beside their beds. These were carved with protective figures, lions, snakes, frogs, sometimes strange composite beasts with wings and scepters. Basically your dream team of celestial bodyguards. They also used headrest charms. Yes, headrests. Egyptians didn't sleep on pillows. They used these U-shaped stone or wood blocks to prop their heads. And guess what? Many were carved with spells to protect against bad dreams. Talk about resting your head on a magical mantra. And the bathroom, also a magical hotspot. Cleansing wasn't just about hygiene. It was a spiritual reset. Water was sacred. The Nile wasn't just a river. It was a living deity. So bathing became a kind of mini-baptism. Some Egyptians whispered purification chants while rinsing their hands or anointing their skin with oils. Honestly, your morning skincare routine. Egyptian queens invented that with lotus oil, frankincense paste, and eyeliner made from ground malachite, which wasn't just for looks. It protected against the evil eye and desert sun. And speaking of eyes, every house had eyes of Horus. You know them, that curved symbol that looks like an eye with eyeliner on steroids. These were placed above beds, carved into walls, or painted on pots, watchful, divine, ever alert. They said, "I see you, ghost. Back it up." Now, here's the wild part. Even pets got magical treatment. Cats weren't just cute. They were sacred, divine, tiny little meat gods with a mean left hook. People named their cats things like Nefertiti, or Sweet of Voice, or Slayer of Mice. Some even gave them amulets to wear, shaped like fish or mini scarabs. A cat with a necklace? Absolutely an ancient vibe. And when a beloved pet died, they weren't tossed aside. They were mummified, buried with honors, sometimes with more elaborate tombs than the owners themselves. You think we spoil our pets today? Try building a cat its own pyramid. Now, not all household magic was gentle. Sometimes, the family needed a little more oomph. Say your neighbor kept blasting loud harp music at midnight, or someone cursed your donkey, or a local priest gave your brother a nasty look. You could respond with a little mirror magic. That's right, polished bronze mirrors weren't just for checking your eyeliner. They were also magical tools. Reflective surfaces were thought to repel evil. Some folks even used mirrors to bounce curses back to their senders. Not today, set. Go hex yourself. There were also protective knots, tied cords with color-coded string, worn around the wrist or ankle. Think of them as spiritual friendship bracelets. Red for protection, blue for clarity, green for fertility. And if you untied someone's knot without permission, that was like punching their soul in the kneecap. And let's not forget the household altar. Many families had a little niche, a shelf, a box, a table, where they placed offerings to gods or ancestors. Bread, beer, incense, even songs written on papyrus. These weren't just decorations, they were micro-temples, little pockets of the sacred, right there by the broom closet. Because ultimately, Egyptians believed that Heka flows where attention goes. The more you honored your home, your family, your ancestors, the more protection, harmony, and luck you attracted. They understood something that we sometimes forget. Magic isn't just about big moments. It's about tiny rituals. Lighting a candle with intention, speaking someone's name with love, whispering a quiet thanks to the stars, placing a charm in your sock drawer because, hey, It makes you feel safe. That's Heka, still alive, still buzzing in the background, still waiting for you to notice. So maybe next time you clean your house, imagine you're sweeping away not just dust, but bad energy. When you cook, stir in a wish. When you wash your hands, let the water carry away more than just germs. Let it carry fear and doubt and all the noise of the modern world. And maybe, just maybe, smile at your cat. She's been watching all along, and she knows you're one step away from becoming your own household deity. Bees would be proud. Absolutely. Let's dive right into section 11. And this time, we're heading back to where it all began and ended for the ancient Egyptians, the tomb. But this isn't just about sarcophagi and gold masks. Oh no, this is about the ultimate glow-up. Welcome to the sacred spa of mummification, ancient edition, where dying is just the beginning of your transformation journey, and the goal is not rest in peace, but rise like a god. So imagine this. You're dead. Again. Sorry, that's a theme. And your body is being carefully carried into a chamber filled with incense so thick it could knock out a modern-day yoga class. The priests are in full regalia, linen robes, shaven heads, jewelry that sparkles like moonlight trapped in gold. Sacred oils glisten on their fingers. The atmosphere, half operating room, half temple, and somehow also part fashion show. Because what's happening here is not embalming, it's alchemy. The priests aren't just preserving you, they're upgrading you. This process is meant to turn your fragile human body into a divine vessel, one that can survive eternity, hang out with gods, and possibly throw shade at the stars. It begins with a subtle but essential first step, the purification. Your body is washed in Nile water. Yes, still sacred, even if it came from the nearest muddy bank. Then comes the salt, and not the kind you sprinkle on fries. This is natron, a naturally occurring blend of salt and baking soda, harvested from dried-up desert lake beds. Basically, the ancient Egyptian version of Preserve Me Forever powder. You're packed with natron, inside, outside, every nook and royal cranny. You sit like that for 40 days, drying out like cosmic jerky. Sound gross? It is, but also incredibly effective. No bugs, no bacteria, no decomposition. Now here comes the juicy part. Literally, organ removal. They open up your left side and scoop out the liver, lungs, stomach, and intestines. And no, this isn't some weird body horror moment. It's highly symbolic. Each organ was sacred, each associated with a protective deity known as the Four Sons of Horus. Your liver went to Imseti, represented as a human-headed guardian. Your lungs were guarded by Hapi, baboon-headed, mischievous, yet watchful. Your stomach went to Duamutef, jackal-headed and deeply serious about digestion. And your intestines, protected by Kabesanuef, falcon-headed, because who better to guard your guts than a bird with razor vision? These organs were carefully wrapped and placed into canopic jars, gorgeous little vessels made of stone or pottery, each topped with the face of its divine guardian. A heart? Ah, that's where it gets dramatic. The heart was supposed to stay in the body. It was the seat of the soul, your identity, your moral record. It would be weighed later against the feather of Ma'at in the Hall of Judgment. But in some mummies, especially during the New Kingdom and later, the heart was missing. possibly removed by mistake or kept aside for its own magical treatment. If the heart couldn't be found, no worries. You'd be given a heart scarab, a magical beetle carved from stone, placed on your chest with inscribed spells like, "Do not stand against me in the tribunal," "Don't snitch." A bit of cosmic insurance. Now, the rest of the body was packed, padded, and reshaped using linen, sawdust, resin, and sometimes even onions, because nothing says royal restoration like stuffing someone with vegetables. Once the body was fully dried and prepped, it was time for the wrapping. And let me tell you, this wasn't just roll you up like a burrito business. Wrapping was sacred choreography. Each finger, each toe, each limb was wrapped individually, often with spells recited at every stage. Words were woven into the linen itself. Think of it as wrapping the body in protective prayers. Tucked between the layers were amulets, lots of them, scarab beetles, eyes of Horus, ankhs, jet pillars, knots of Isis. Every symbol served a different magical function: protect the body, energize the soul, guide the body, unlock gates in the underworld, and most importantly, keep demons from photobombing your afterlife selfies. By the time the wrapping was complete, you didn't just look like a mummy, you looked like a magical fortress. And then, just to make sure you were spiritually booted up, they performed the opening of the mouth ceremony. This was huge. A priest, often dressed as Anubis, would touch ritual instruments to your lips, eyes, ears, and nose, literally reanimating your senses. Why? Because in the afterlife, you needed to be able to speak, see, hear, and breathe to defend yourself, enjoy offerings, and recite spells. Without this ritual, you might end up as an eternal mute, floating around the field of reeds like a confused magical balloon. And speaking of fields, you didn't just get shoved into a tomb and called it a day. Oh no. You were placed in a sarcophagus, surrounded by a symphony of sacred inscriptions and protective texts, a combination of pyramid texts, coffin texts, and personalized spells from the Book of the Dead. Some of these spells were absurdly specific. One to transform into a bird to escape danger. One to make your legs work after death, because ghost cramps are real. One to ward off snakes, fire, crocodiles, jealous ghosts, and your own shadow if it got too sassy. Your coffin itself was covered with symbols, bright colors, magical phrases, and the face of the sky goddess Nut, arms spread wide to welcome you home. The tomb wasn't just a hole in the ground. It was a cosmic launch pad. Its walls were adorned with scenes of gods, maps of the underworld, depictions of your best moments, probably with some creative retouching, and even instructions for what to say to pass various gatekeepers. You brought food offerings, shoutees, little servant figurines meant to work for you in the afterlife, and sometimes booby traps, curses, or protective enchantments, just in case someone tried to rob your tomb or swipe your amulets off eBay. Because let's be honest, eternity's long. You don't want to spend it unwrapped and underprepared. So when you finally lay in peace, you weren't just chilling in a box. You were suspended in a magically charged, divinely aligned stasis, waiting for the soul to reassemble and rise again. Not metaphorically, literally, because death to the ancient Egyptians was not the end. It was a stage, a ceremony, a transformation, and mummification. That wasn't just a way to keep your bones dry. It was a ritual of rebirth, They believed that by preserving the body, you preserve the vessel for eternal light. And through the right words, symbols, scents, and ceremonies, you'd awaken, transfigured, luminous, akified, and join the divine circuit of stars, gods, and celestial mysteries forever. So the next time you see a mummy in a museum behind glass, don't just think old bones wrapped in cloth. Think alchemical masterpiece. Think dreamer in suspended magic. Think a soul mid-flight, still whispering spells through the folds of time. Because death in ancient Egypt was just the beginning of your second life. Absolutely. Let's now step into the heart of the journey, not through dusty scrolls or sealed tombs, but into one of ancient Egypt's most enigmatic and utterly magical texts, the famed Book of the Dead. And fair warning, this isn't your average bedtime reading, unless your idea of bedtime stories involves soul-splitting monsters, flaming lakes, talking doors, and crocodile-headed judges. Which, let's be honest, you're kind of into at this point, right? Here we go. Picture it. You've died. Again. You should really stop doing that. But this time, you're ready. Because clutched in your hand, or more likely, wrapped into the linen folds of your newly anointed mummy self, is a customized, divinely inspired cheat sheet. A scroll full of sacred spells, gorgeous illustrations, otherworldly maps, and poetic monologues designed to help you navigate the weirdest, most dangerous, most bureaucratic cosmic road trip of all time. This is the Book of the Dead, or, as the ancient Egyptians called it, the Book of Coming Forth by Day. Not dead, not forgotten, coming forth, like the sun, like a phoenix, like you, if you manage not to get eaten by a demon on page 12. Let's talk about what this book actually was. It wasn't a single book, really. It was a personalized collection of spells, prayers, hymns, illustrations, and magical instructions, usually written on papyrus, sometimes on linen, tomb walls, or coffins. It could be dozens of feet long, depending on how wealthy you were. The richer the soul, the longer the scroll. And yes, it was a deluxe package. Not everyone got one. If you were poor, you might get a basic model. If you were rich, you'd go full premium, gilded borders, top-tier pigments, illustrations so vibrant they still slap in 2025. But why did you need it? Because the afterlife wasn't a free pass. It was more like an escape room meets spiritual obstacle course, except the traps involved soul-snatching monsters, upside-down rivers, talking fire, and divine customs officers who grilled you harder than TSA at LAX. Let's walk through it. First up, once you're dead, and your Ka, spirit essence, and Ba, your soul that could literally fly, are doing their awkward post-death reunions, you enter Duat, the Egyptian underworld. It is weird and wild. The Duat is a chaotic dreamscape full of glowing caverns, lakes of fire, floating heads, celestial boats, dark corridors, and gates with personalities. No, seriously, some gates ask riddles, others just scream at you. Without your Book of the Dead, you'd be wandering around like someone lost in IKEA, trying to find the exit while a serpent god recites your high school report card. But with your spells in hand, you've got GPS. Let's look at a few of the banger spells from this sacred scroll. Spell 9, the way to go forth by day. This is your exit strategy. It's the ultimate, I'm not dead, I'm just in between reincarnations kind of declaration. You recite this to convince the gods, and possibly yourself, that you're about to resurrect into the sunlight, like Ra himself. Spell 89, coming forth by day after lying down. This one's basically a morning alarm spell. It's to wake you up in the next world, shake off the shadows, and get you walking upright like a freshly reborn cosmic citizen. Spell 98. Let me board the boat of Ra. Okay, now you're trying to hitch a ride on the sun god's celestial yacht. And Ra, he's not Uber. You gotta earn your spot. This spell is your VIP pass, your application to become crew on the sun ship that sails through the heavens by day and battles chaos by night. But let's not skip the hardest level, the Hall of Judgment, also known as the Weighing of the Heart ceremony. You arrive at the Grand Hall, columns tall as mountains, incense in the air, glowing golden floors that seem to breathe. In the center, the scale. One side, your heart. The other, the feather of Moat, goddess of truth and cosmic balance. The logic is simple. If your heart is heavier than the feather because of guilt, regret, unkindness, unpaid parking tickets, you're toast. Literally, you'll be devoured by Amet, the crocodile lion hippo hybrid goddess with zero chill. If your heart is light, you pass, you ascend. You go on to live in the field of reeds, a heavenly version of Egypt, where everything is perfect. The Nile is always at the right level, and nobody steals your sandals. But there's a twist. You don't just show up and get weighed. Oh no. You first have to pass the 42 negative confessions. It's like a cosmic courtroom where you stand before 42 divine judges and declare one by one, I have not killed. I have not lied. I have not stolen sacred bread. I have not spoken too much. Relatable struggle, honestly. If that sounds intimidating, it was. But again, your trusty Book of the Dead has your back. Some versions even include bluff spells. You recite them to dazzle or confuse the divine judges. O great ones, do not weigh me today, for I am a friend of the gods, and I know the secret name of your cat. Boom. Now, let's talk imagery. These scrolls weren't all text. They were gorgeous. The scenes are like comic strips of the afterlife. Colorful, strange, strangely familiar. You've got Anubis leading souls, Horus presenting the heart, Thoth writing notes, always the cosmic note-taker, Ammit licking her lips, and Osiris sitting on his judgment throne like he just walked out of a high-fashion funeral. Even the spells themselves often started with verbs like I say, I rise, I become, because these weren't passive. You had to own your magic. You didn't beg the gods. You became like them. That's the wild thing. This book didn't just help you survive the afterlife. It helped you transform, not just into a good ghost, but into a divine being. The final chapters of the Book of the Dead include spells to let you merge with light, to travel the heavens, to sit beside Ra, to become a lotus, a falcon, a fire-spitting cobra, even to turn invisible. It's basically a divine shapeshifter's guidebook. So why do we still care about it now? Because it reminds us that storytelling is power, that what we say about ourselves, the words we speak, the names we claim, the journeys we imagine, shapes what we become. And let's face it, deep down, we all want a map, a spell book, a guide for how to navigate the weird chaos of existence with just a little more hope and a lot more flair. That's what the Book of the Dead was. Not a book of fear, but a book of navigation, of affirmation, of immense, glorious, radiant transformation. So, next time you feel lost, remember, somewhere, your soul still holds the memory of ancient ink and featherlight truth. And maybe, just maybe, it's time you wrote your own chapter in the book of coming forth by day. Now that's afterlife goals. Absolutely. Let's now continue with section 13, where we dive into one of the most mesmerizing and downright cinematic scenes in all of ancient Egyptian imagination, the Hall of Judgment. Now cue the suspenseful music, because this is the part of the afterlife where things get real. No more sacred bath oils. No more amulets shaped like frogs. This is the moment you step into a divine courtroom with your soul on trial and eternity hanging in the balance. You ready? Good. Because the double doors are creaking open, and you are walking. Yes, you, with your bob fluttering like a soul-powered butterfly above your shoulder, into a hall more colossal than any cathedral, more solemn than any courtroom, and more glowingly epic than any Marvel movie set. This is the weighing of the heart, the single most important test in the ancient Egyptian afterlife. You stand before Osiris, king of the dead, god of resurrection, wearer of the finest white linen robe you've ever seen. He's seated on a throne made of gold, lapis lazuli, and Sirius cosmic energy, with a crook and flail crossed over his chest, because ancient Egyptian gods never did settle. To his side is Thoth, the ibis-headed scribe, tall, regal, and quietly judging you with his celestial clipboard. In front of you stands Anubis, jackal-headed, eyes glowing like obsidian lanterns. He's the god of embalming, the one who guided your body through mummification, and now he's your soul's referee. And between you both, a scale, a massive one, carved from truth itself. One side holds your heart, not metaphorically, your actual sacred, magically preserved, possibly onion-padded heart. The other side, a feather, specifically the feather of Ma'at, goddess of truth, balance, order, and universal justice. It's lighter than light itself. It's the cosmic standard for what's real, good, and right. And here's the deal.
If your heart is lighter than the feather, congratulations, you win. You pass into eternal paradise. You get your VIP pass to the Field of Reeds. You basically become a chill immortal, sipping lotus wine and talking philosophy with Horus.
But if your heart is heavier, weighed down by lies, cruelty, ego, or just a really bad week, well, say hello to Amit. She's crouched beside the scale, licking her lips, tail twitching like an apex predator. Her body is a Frankenstein fusion of lion, hippopotamus, and crocodile. In other words, she is the physical embodiment of Nope. If the scale tips the wrong way, she leaps forward and devours your heart. And you're erased. Not punished, not tormented, erased. You become nothing. No afterlife, no legacy, no second chance. It's the ancient Egyptian version of getting unfriended by the cosmos. Now, here's where it gets even more intense. Before the scale even moves, you have to make the 42 negative confessions. Yes, 42. Each one is addressed to a specific minor deity, and they're not vague. You're not saying, I was generally a good person. No, you go one by one. I have not killed. I have not stolen. I have not spoken lies. I have not polluted the Nile. I have not committed adultery, even in my thoughts. I have not caused terror. I have not eaten my heart. Yes, that's a real one. No, I don't think it's literal, but also, maybe don't. It's a spiritual audit, a moral accounting, and each statement isn't just defense, it's spell work. Each word helps lift your heart, purify your soul, align you with Mat. If that sounds familiar, it should. It's the ancient Egyptian equivalent of a life review, a spiritual mirror, and a cosmic therapy session rolled into one. And here's the twist. You weren't expected to be perfect. I mean, come on. Even Ra had bad days. But you were expected to have tried, to have lived with integrity, kindness, and intention, to have respected the order of the universe. Because Makat wasn't just about morality. She was about balance, keeping things in proportion, harmony, respect for the gods, the land, the people, and yes, even the cats. And if you passed, if your heart and the feather balanced, or better yet, your heart was light full of joy, truth, purpose, Thoth, the divine scribe, would nod solemnly, ink his pen, and write your name into the book of the blessed dead. And Osiris would raise his hand and say, "Let this soul pass." And then you stepped into the field of reeds. Picture it. Endless green fields under a soft golden sun. Crops grow as tall as your dreams. You reunite with loved ones, ancestors, pets, maybe even a friendly ghost cat or two. You can eat, drink, sing, farm, but only if you want to, and visit temples made of starlight. The afterlife wasn't some vague heavenly realm. It was Egypt, perfected, an eternal Nile, a land of balance, beauty, and bliss, a forever home custom built by your soul. But this peaceful future all hinged on this one moment, this one weighing, this one breathless judgment scene, and the sheer drama of it. Oh, it's Shakespeare meets Spielberg, because it reminds us of something truly timeless, that what we carry in our hearts matters, that the weight of our actions doesn't disappear when we do, that how we live echoes, vibrates into eternity. So the next time you feel heavy with stress or guilt or doubt, ask yourself, is my heart heavier than a feather? Not in shame, but in awareness. Because maybe, just maybe, your life is the ritual. And your kindness, that's the spell. Your honesty, the offering. The offering. Your laughter, your tears, your love, that's what makes your heart light. Light enough to pass. Light enough to rise. Light enough to go forth by day. Welcome to your trial, my friend, and may your soul forever dance in balance with the stars. And once your heart is declared pure and your name inscribed into the book of the blessed dead, you don't just stroll casually into paradise. Nope, you've still got one last journey to make. You must pass the gates of the duet. And let me tell you, these aren't your average gates. They don't swing open with a polite creak. They don't have welcome mats or brass handles. These gates are living, talking, and frequently judgy. You approach one. It stares at you, literally. It might have eyes. It might be made of fire. It might even be a serpent coiled into the shape of a door frame. It asks your name, not your regular name, your true name, the one only your soul knows. If you don't say it, boom, you're rejected, maybe incinerated, maybe turned around and sent back to start the whole process again. So you answer, and the gate whispers. It opens, just a crack, enough for you to slip through, and then another and another. Some gates demand spells, some demand names of guardians, some demand you to answer riddles or declare you're not the enemy of bread. Yes, that is literally a line. Egyptian gates were very pro-carb. Each passage is harder than the last. The path isn't linear. It's ritual geometry, twisting, looping, lined with symbols that shift and shimmer like ink dropped in water. You're not just walking. You're transforming. Your body, wrapped in magic. Your soul, sharpened with words of power. Your essence, becoming something new, something unbound. And then comes the final boat. It's there, waiting on a river that looks nothing like the Nile, but also exactly like it. It shines under a sky of endless darkness, stars swimming in waves above your head. This is the solar bark, the boat of Ra. And no, this is not a pleasure cruise. By night, this ship journeys through the most terrifying realms of chaos. Caverns of fire, lakes of knives, rivers of blood, and shadow realms, so ancient, even the gods whisper their names. Why? Because Ra, the sun god, is not just a light bringer. He's a warrior. Every night, he journeys through the underworld, just like you did, and battles the eternal serpent of chaos, Apophis. Apep, the Unmaker, the giant cosmic snake that wants to unweave reality, undo creation, and turn existence into a quiet, flavorless void. Basically, the physical embodiment of Monday. Ra's crew includes the fiercest deities in the pantheon. Sea, the personification of perception. Heka, the god of magic himself. And sometimes, you. If you've passed all the tests, spoken all the names, survived all the riddles and wriggling spirits, you can ride with Ra, not just as a passenger, as part of his crew. You help steer the boat. You chant spells to keep it moving. You hurl spears of light into the coils of Apophis.
You help save the cosmos.
Every single night. And when the battle is won, the horizon glows gold. The darkness melts into dawn, and you rise, not just in spirit, but as a new being, a transfigured soul, an Ach. You are radiant, feather light, glowing from within with the breath of creation. You are reborn with the sun. And what's next? Oh, only eternity. The field of reeds stretches before you, green and infinite, crops taller than you ever imagined, crystal clear canals winding between perfect villages, the scent of lotus blossoms in the breeze. Everyone you've ever loved, who made it through, is there, waving at you. And you're not just a soul. You're a citizen of the stars, a divine being, a whisper in the wind, and a light in the sky. You eat. You sing. You dance. You journey to temples made of moonlight. You sail with Ra. You rest in Osiris's shade. And every morning, you rise again. Because life, in Egypt, it never truly ends. It just changes shape. Over and over, like the river, like the stars, like you. Even in a paradise as lush and eternal as the field of reeds, ancient Egyptians knew one truth better than most. Not everything stays buried. Because sometimes something wakes up, and sometimes something wants revenge. Let's get one thing straight. Ancient Egyptians were masters of magic, ritual, and protection. They wrapped their dead in hundreds of layers of linen, carved spells into tomb walls, placed amulets on every limb, and buried them beneath mountains of stone and centuries of sand. But even so, they were terrified of the one thing that could undo it all, the unquiet dead. These weren't just spooky stories told around a flickering oil lamp. These were real threats, real fears. Because if a spirit wasn't properly honored, buried, appeased, or let's be honest, magically muzzled, it could become something else. The Egyptians had a name for these beings, mute, not like mom, but more like vengeful dead thing that's really, really mad. You forgot to light its incense stick. These Mut weren't your classic chain-rattling ghosts. They were active. They could whisper sickness into your lungs, ruin your crops, cause miscarriages, infect your dreams, or even tie your hair to your bedpost. Literally, that was a real curse. That was a real curse. Imagine waking up with your braid fused to your bed frame and a note that says, "Maybe now you'll remember my offering plate." These vengeful dead didn't just attack strangers. They came for family members, people who didn't bury them properly, neighbors who disrespected their tombs, priests who skipped steps during funerary rites, even tomb robbers, especially them who dared to defile the sanctity of the eternal home. And what did the Egyptians do in response? They fought magic with more magic. Enter the execration texts. These were like ancient Egyptian death threats, but official. They weren't just whispered, they were written, ritualized, and violent. Here's how it worked. Let's say you have an enemy. Could be a political rival, could be your cheating ex, could be an invading foreign king, or maybe just a ghost who keeps rearranging your pantry. You'd go to a ritual specialist, maybe a priest, maybe a professional curse crafter. Yes, that was a job. And you'd commission an execration ritual. They'd write your enemy's name, because names were powerful, onto a piece of clay, a shard of pottery, or even a wax figure carved in their likeness. Like voodoo dolls, sort of, but these came with extra drama. Then you do something violent to it. You might stab it with a ritual knife. You might burn it while chanting curses. But the classic move? You smashed it. Hard. In a temple courtyard, or by the river, or deep in the desert sands. You'd crush it underfoot while reciting lines like, "May you be torn limb from limb. May your bones be ground into dust. May your name be forgotten by the living and denied by the gods." Subtle, right? Sometimes these ritual texts were buried in the foundations of cities or fortresses like magical landmines. You step into my kingdom with bad intentions. Boom, your soul just got obliterated by a 400-year-old hex. But even that wasn't always enough. Some tombs were built with layered magical defenses, inscriptions on every wall, guardian statues, secret passages, and most chilling of all, curses, inscribed directly into the stone above the burial chamber. Usually in polite but threatening language, like, "Anyone who disturbs this tomb will be judged by the gods, devoured by crocodiles, and their lineage erased for eternity." Yikes. And while these weren't exactly common, they weren't in every tomb. They were real, especially in elite burials, where people had more to lose and more to protect. Take, for example, the tomb of Kentika Ikeki, an old kingdom official. His warning: as for any man who shall enter this tomb, unclean or with evil intent, he shall be burned by the flame of the gods. His children shall not inherit, and his name shall vanish like smoke. That is not a vibe you want hanging over your head while looting for gold rings. Then there's the infamous Curse of the Pharaohs. Yes, the one that made headlines when King Tutankhamun's tomb was opened in the 1920s. Was it real? Who knows? But the man who led the excavation, Lord Carnarvon, did die mysteriously shortly afterward, and so did a few others. Coincidence? The Egyptians would say, no such thing. Because to them, name and memory were survival. If your tomb was violated, if your name was scraped off the wall, you risk something worse than death: being forgotten. To be dead, erased from the world of the living and the afterlife. That was the ultimate punishment. That was the second death. So they fought to keep that from happening, with spells, with threats, with magical rage sculpted in stone. And that rage, it still lingers, in the dry desert winds that moan through ruined burial shafts, in the shiver you feel when you stare too long into an empty eye socket, in the strange dream that wakes you at 3 a.m. after reading about curses on the internet. Because ancient Egyptian magic wasn't just about healing or harmony or helping the dead find peace. Sometimes it was about protecting what's sacred, about vengeance, about keeping the balance through fear. And hey, sometimes fear works. Sometimes fear is the spell. So next time you walk past a grave, an old ruin, or even a closed closet door, maybe whisper a little respect. You never know who or what is still listening. And as you drift farther from the heavy, sand-laced weight of curses and revenants, something softer begins to unfold. Not lighter in power, but in texture, in rhythm, in glow. Because now, we're stepping into the radiant embrace of the goddess who held the sky above the world, the stars inside her belly, and the souls of the dead upon her skin. Her name is Nut, and she is everything the darkness is not. Nut wasn't just a sky goddess. She was the sky. Her body stretched from horizon to horizon, arching like a celestial dome over the earth. God Jeb, her eternal lover, who lay beneath her. The two were separated each day by the atmosphere, aka their dad, Shu, because even divine romance gets the parental disapproval treatment sometimes. But despite the separation, they created something eternal, the cycle of life and death, light and darkness. Each evening, Nut would swallow the sun, yes, like a cosmic fireball burrito, and carry it through her star-studded body. At dawn, she'd give birth to it again, golden and new. Now, take a moment with that image. You are lying on the sands of ancient Egypt, eyes turned to the sky. The stars aren't dots, they're freckles on a goddess's skin. The Milky Way, a ribbon of her hair. Her arms curve above you, her legs shimmer with constellations. She's not up there. She's holding you. That's the magic of Nut. She wasn't just a background figure in Egyptian mythology. She was the blanket of the cosmos, the cradle of the afterlife, and most importantly, the guardian of the dead. See, Nut had a special job: to catch the souls of the departed as they rose from their tombs, weary and freshly awakened. Imagine this: the soul, your soul, rising like a flicker of light, lifting out of the wrappings, and the dark chambers of stone, unsure, vulnerable, lost in the maze between dimensions. And then you land softly into her arms. Not a fall, a landing. She receives you, gathers you to her breast, wraps you in her sky-like body. And here's where it gets more mystical. Nut wasn't just metaphorically present. She was painted inside coffins. That's right. In later dynasties, especially during the New Kingdom, Nut's image was often carved or painted directly inside the lid of the sarcophagus, facing the deceased, stretched out with arms wide open. So when the coffin was sealed, the final thing you saw was her, the night sky welcoming you home, her painted eyes locked on yours, watching, waiting, loving. Her presence told the soul, "Soul, you are not alone. You are not forgotten. You are still beneath my stars." She was, in every sense, a celestial womb for the dead. And guess what? Nut wasn't alone in this role. She was part of a divine support system that kicked in the moment the soul transitioned. A chorus of protective deities who showed up not with trumpets or fiery swords, but with oil, linen, lullabies, and spells. Let's talk about Isis and Nephthys, the ultimate sister tag team. Isis, the divine mother and magical queen, known for putting her husband Osiris back together piece by magical piece. Nephthys, her quieter, darker twin, goddess of mourning and the threshold between realms. Together, they appear on either side of the sarcophagus, arms raised in protection, wings sometimes painted like giant iridescent shields. They chant over the dead. They mourn, but not in despair, in ritual, in transformation. Because mourning in Egypt wasn't an end. It was a signal, a way to wake the gods, to call the soul back, to empower it through grief and song. Even the 4 sons of Horus, who we met earlier inside those canopic jars, stand guard in the next world. They don't just babysit your organs. They serve as spiritual bouncers, warding off chaos from your soul's journey. And then there's Ra, the sun god himself. If you pass all your trials, if you're strong enough, wise enough, light enough in heart, and heavy enough in spellcraft, you might not just join him. You might become him. Part of his entourage, part of the light. And let's not forget Osiris. He's not just king of the dead. He is resurrection. He's the blueprint, the prototype. The god who died, was torn apart, reassembled, and then rose again, greener than springtime and just as eternal. When you enter the afterlife, you become Osiris. Your name merges with his. Your tomb is called the House of Osiris. Your transformation mimics his sacred death and divine rebirth. He is not a distant god. He is your future self. So let's string all this together. You die. You're mummified, wrapped in spells, amulets, sacred oils. You face judgment. You pass. You ascend. You are caught by Nut. You are blessed by Isis and Nephthys. You are guarded by Horus's sons. You sail with Ra. You rise with Osiris. And in doing so, you don't just survive death. You transcend it. You become eternal magic. That's the deepest secret of the Egyptian afterlife. It's not about survival. It's about metamorphosis. You aren't clinging to life. You're graduating from it. So when you next see a star, just a tiny flicker in the sky. Maybe it's not burning gas in light years of distance. Maybe it's someone's soul. Maybe it's someone who passed through Nut's embrace, earned their wings, and now watches over the world, not as a ghost, but as a shining Akh, a being of brilliance, truth, and infinite peace. And you might just be on that path too. But for all the shimmering goddesses, protective spells, and rebirth rituals, there was one shadow ancient Egyptians could never fully escape: tomb raiders. Yes, even in a society that wrote curses on walls, painted gods with flaming knives, and believed your soul could literally be devoured by a demon-crocodile hybrid, people still said, "Hey, let's crack this sarcophagus open and see what's inside." Now, we're not talking Indiana Jones here. We're talking actual, terrifying consequences. And yet the risk was worth it for some, because tombs weren't just graves. They were treasure vaults. Think golden masks, jewelry that glowed like trapped sunlight, perfumes sealed in alabaster jars, hand-carved statues, and yes, scrolls full of personal, custom-made spells. Burial goods weren't symbolic. They were functional. You needed food to eat, sandals to walk, makeup to dazzle, and amulets to defend yourself in the afterlife. So what happens when someone steals that? What happens when your mummy's gold heart scarab ends up hanging from some greasy finger in the marketplace? That's spiritual sabotage. It wasn't just theft. It was a cosmic violation. So the Egyptians fought back. How? With layers of magical booby traps, of course. Let's break it down. First, you had the architectural tricks. False doors, hidden corridors, secret burial chambers placed at angles so robbers would get lost or buried alive if a tunnel collapsed. Some tombs had decoy rooms stuffed with fake offerings just to fool greedy eyes. Then came the magical defenses. The most feared? The curse. Inscribed into the very stone, it would say something like, "Whosoever enters this tomb, let the crocodile be against him in the water, the snake against him on land, let the hippopotamus be against him on the riverbank." Basically, if you disturb the dead, everything that can bite you will bite you. And these weren't empty threats. Egyptians believed that words held power. Once chiseled into stone, they were like activated spells, permanent, pulsing with energy, eternally listening. Some tomb curses added extra drama. As for anyone who enters this tomb with evil in their heart, the sky shall rain fire upon them. Their children will never be born, and their name shall be erased from memory. Harsh? Yes. Effective? You bet. Because in Egypt, being forgotten was worse than death. If your name vanished from the world of the living, your K had nowhere to land. No offerings, no recognition, no anchor. Your soul would drift, hungry and unseen, a ghost starving for identity. So curses weren't just revenge. They were defensive soul armor. But the fear of tomb robbing wasn't just spiritual. It was a logistical nightmare for the living, too. There were actual police squads during the New Kingdom, tasked with investigating tomb theft. Yes, ancient CSI. They'd interrogate suspects, reconstruct broken seals, track down stolen goods, and sometimes even execute the guilty. And the drama? It's all written down on papyrus. There's one case where workers at Deir el-Medina, yes, the same village that built the royal tombs, got caught robbing them. It's like a pizza delivery guy stealing a slice on the way to your door. These guys knew the tunnels, knew where the gold was hidden, knew how to bypass traps, and still, they were caught. Because the gods, they don't take kindly to shortcuts. The thing is, everyone was afraid of being robbed, even pharaohs. Some pharaohs, like Seti I, had tombs that were so elaborate it took robbers weeks to even find the burial chamber. Others went minimalist. During the third intermediate period, tombs got smaller, simpler, and more secret. It was like a trend, new minimalist tomb aesthetic, because flashy graves get looted. In some cases, entire mummy relocations were organized. Seriously, priests would secretly exhume royal mummies, rewrap them, rebury them elsewhere, deep in hidden shafts, just to keep them safe. Think about that. Centuries after death, kings were being moved in secret, like witnesses in a spiritual protection program. Why? Because the dead weren't gone. They were still somewhere, still watching, still hoping their names would be spoken, their offerings renewed, their bodies untouched, their journey uninterrupted. And when it was interrupted, there were stories of haunted tombs, of explorers struck with sudden fevers, of inscriptions that burned into the walls, of statues that turned to face you when no one was watching. And of course, the most infamous story of all, Tutankhamun's curse. When his tomb was opened in 1922, strange things began to happen. Lord Carnarvon, the financier of the dig, died from a mosquito bite that got infected right after the tomb was opened. His dog, back in England, howled and dropped dead at the same moment. Several other members of the expedition fell mysteriously ill or died over the following years. Was it superstition, coincidence, or the long reach of ancient magic, waking up after a 3,000-year nap? Egyptians would say nothing is ever really coincidence, especially when the tomb has been disturbed, especially when the dead were not ready. So here's the final thought. To the ancient Egyptians, the tomb wasn't a grave. It was a womb of the next life, a launch pad to the stars, a sacred space of memory, identity, and power. To violate it wasn't just robbery, it was cosmic sacrilege. And that's why their magic was not just protective, it was vengeful, eternal, and absolutely not messing around. So if you ever find yourself near an ancient tomb, walk quietly, speak a blessing. Don't touch anything you can't spiritually afford, because some curses, they don't fade. They wait. After all the battles, all the judgment, all the spells chanted in the flickering firelight of tombs and temples, you reach the final truth of ancient Egyptian magic. It wasn't just about avoiding death. It was about becoming eternal. And now, in this next sacred space of imagination, we step into the most exalted transformation a soul could ever undergo. The moment when you are no longer a ghost wandering dark halls or a babbard perched on a pillar. You become an Heka, not just a spirit. No, an Ak was a being of radiance, purified magic, and cosmic authority. The literal translation? Something like the effective one. But let's be honest, that's like calling the sun a warm object or Beyoncé a singer. The Akal is what happens when the soul has passed all trials, joined with the Ka, and is finally set free to glow across the heavens. You're no longer just you. You are divinized. Your presence is now eternally active. You can speak to the gods, travel with Ra, influence the living world, appear in dreams, dance across stars. You are part of the cosmic current. And here's the kicker. Becoming an Akh wasn't a passive process. It required constant attention, ritual, and memory maintenance. Because, to the Egyptians, memory was fuel. Your name needed to be spoken. Your image needed to be seen. Offerings needed to be made. Prayers recited. Spells activated. All of this fed your Akhlsh. Without memory, you faded. But with it, you could appear in the dreams of your descendants. You could cause good fortune to those who honored you, or bring a little chaos to the ones who forgot. Yes, even as an Akh, you kept that spicy drama energy. You were a star, literally. Some ancient texts describe the Aku, plural, as the blessed dead who shine in the sky. Constellations, bright points of presence, celestial beings who now live in the night, watching, glowing, guiding. Imagine that for a moment. You're lying beneath the stars, modern, earthly you, and you look up. Every point of light. That's someone, a soul that made it through judgment, through duat, through fire and chaos, and came out the other side bright and eternal. That's the true magic of ancient Egypt. The belief that you don't disappear, you transform, you evolve, and not into something ghostly or invisible or tragic. You become effective. An Akh could help the living. People left letters to their dead relatives, asking for assistance with love, money, fertility, revenge, of course, and more. And the Akh, they'd answer, through dreams, through omens, through a breeze that passed just when it was needed. They weren't passive ancestors. They were active agents of fate. But being an Akh wasn't just about power. It was also about peace. Because the Akaf didn't have to wander, didn't have to suffer, didn't need anything. It had become everything. It could live in the field of reeds. It could join the sun god in his boat. It could slip into Nut's arms and dream for eternity. And what was the final goal? Not to rest, but to glow. To exist as light. To participate in the divine cycle of the universe. And that's the thing that still gives us chills. Thousands of years later, this was a civilization that built pyramids, carved tombs, composed books, and performed rituals, all for one radiant reason: to make a soul shine forever. And they didn't believe this magic was only for kings or priests. They believed that anyone could earn it. Anyone could speak the right spells, live in balance with Ma'at, carry truth in their heart, and rise into eternity as a star among stars. So maybe that's the takeaway. In a world obsessed with what ends, Egypt reminds us to look up. Because every ending, every death, every loss, every whisper of grief is also a becoming of light, of meaning, of memory, a transformation into something that moves unseen, but never unfelt. And maybe, just maybe, you, listening now, are carrying a bit of anchorage inside you already, that glowing part of yourself that refuses to vanish, that spark that craves legacy, impact, beauty, and awe, the part that wants to be remembered, not for ego, but for love, because the Akh didn't demand worship. It just asked to be seen, to be spoken, to be carried forward in story. And that's what we're doing here. By remembering these ancient souls, these magical rituals, these beautiful absurdities of crocodile gods and judgment scales, we're not just learning history, we're feeding the stars. So go outside tonight. Look up. Whisper a name. Maybe your ancestors, maybe your own. And know, deep down, you are not alone under the sky. You're part of it. One day, you'll rise too. And when you do, you'll shine. But let's be honest. For all the dazzling gold cosmic river journeys and radiant post-death upgrades into soul stars, there was something ancient Egyptians feared even more than dying. Something worse than judgment. Worse than curses. Worse than having your heart eaten by a demon, hippo, lion, crocodile hybrid while the gods side-eye you from their golden thrones. You want to know what it was? It was this. Being forgotten. The ultimate cosmic nightmare wasn't eternal torment. It was nothingness. No name, no face, no place in memory. No one to say your name out loud at dinner. No one to light incense for you. No one to pour beer or bread into the offering tray, even symbolically, in ancient Egyptian terms. That was the second death, the real death, the one you couldn't come back from. And that's why every spell, every monument, every tiny inscription scratched onto a scrap of limestone was a spiritual insurance policy, a cry into the cosmos. Remember me, keep me alive. So how did the Egyptians make sure their names echoed forever? Let's start with the big one, the name itself. A person's name, Ren, wasn't just an identity tag. It was a living force, a magical beacon. Your name carried your presence. Speak it aloud. You summon a bit of that person. Erase it from the walls. You strike a fatal blow to their existence. That's why pharaohs went to wild lengths to carve their names everywhere. On obelisks, temples, statues, sphinx paws. You'd think they were narcissists, but in reality, they were just really scared of disappearing. Even common folks got in on this. They couldn't afford 70-foot statues or hieroglyphs inlaid with turquoise, but they'd scribble their names onto bowls, bricks, and walls with hopeful tenacity. Like, "Hi, it's me, Bakhmut. Remember me when you pour your wine." And it worked. Because every time someone read that name, it fluttered to life for a heartbeat. Now, here's where it gets deeply emotional. Families were trained to remember, to pass down stories, to tell the tales of Grandpa's magical fish amulet or Auntie Nefru's ridiculously elaborate funeral dance, to keep the flame of memory lit. And offerings. Offerings were more than food. They were fuel. Every loaf of bread, every onion, every splash of beer was like a power-up for the Heka. You fed their essence. You kept them strong. Not just for emotional comfort, but because they might still help you. As Aku, they could send blessings, dreams, warnings. They weren't passive. They were part of the living world through memory. And tombs? They weren't graves. They were memory engines. Each painting, spell, and symbol was a safeguard, a visual poem, a spell to ensure that even if no one visited you in 1,000 years, your story would be read again. Which is literally what we're doing right now. Think about that. Right now, you are remembering them, whispering their names in your mind, seeing their afterlife dreams in your imagination. You're lighting a virtual incense stick with your attention, and that's powerful. That's magic. But Egyptians didn't just rely on family or priests. They were practical mystics. They believed in backup plans. Enter the Shabti dolls. These little figurines, often made of faience, stone, or wood, were buried with the dead, but they weren't just decoration. Each one was inscribed with a spell that said something like, "If I'm called upon to do work in the afterlife, like farming or canal digging, this doll will go in my place." Can we just appreciate that? Ancient Egyptians basically invented magical labor outsourcing. But more than that, Shabtus were also stand-ins for memory. Even if no one alive remembered you, these enchanted mini-mans would serve in your name, speak on your behalf, and keep your name active in the realm of the gods. And when words failed, they had art. Tomb murals weren't just decorative, they were operational. Every image had power. Every banquet scene, every offering ritual painted on the wall was meant to continue happening for eternity. That's right, the wall was a looped spell, a magical gif repeating forever. Bread baked, perfume offered, music played, forever and ever, world without end, Amen Hotep. Because remember, it wasn't the death that was scary, it was being erased. Now, I want you to pause. Look around your room. Think of your name, your photos, your stories, your weird little habits that only your closest people understand. What if your entire afterlife depended on people keeping those things alive? What if memory was everything? In a way. Maybe it still is. Maybe the ancients were onto something. Because even now, we want to be remembered. Not just in stone, but in feeling, in the warmth of a shared story, in the twinge of emotion when someone sees your old favorite song pop up. We want to linger, not like ghosts, but like echoes. So maybe memory is magic. And maybe every time we tell an ancient story, light a candle for someone gone, speak a name out loud, we're casting the oldest spell there is. You exist. I remember. You shine. So, we've journeyed through the blazing solar barks, the cold corridors of the Duat, the shimmering halls of judgment, and the spell-laced linen of mummies wrapped in eternity. But there's one last chamber in this temple of storytelling, one final candle to burn low before the night fully takes us. And it is a place not carved in stone or written in ink. It is carved in light. This is the moment where all the threads come together. Heka, the sacred force of magic that began at the dawn of time, now cradles you like a spell that was never broken. You are no longer a listener, a dreamer, or a visitor. You are part of the story. And as we descend into this closing space, let's take one final step back through the whispers of the Nile. Imagine yourself walking along its ancient banks, bare feet brushing reeds, water lapping at your toes, like the breath of the gods themselves. The moon is full tonight, and its reflection scatters across the black, glossy surface of the river like 1,000 tiny scarabs. Each one a memory, a soul, a charm flickering in the moonlight. Overhead, the stars have opened their eyes. The goddess Nut stretches across the sky again, her celestial body arched above you like a dome of midnight silk. Her fingers touch the horizon behind you, her toes rest on the one ahead. You feel the hush of eternity in the air, but you also feel safe. Because now you carry within you all the rituals, myths and mysteries that once guarded the pharaohs and comforted the poor. You carry the power of words that once lit tombs, calmed spirits, and even turned back chaos itself. And the Heka, that invisible current of magical resonance that surged through gods and humans alike, now hums softly in your own chest. You are wrapped in it, like linen, cradled in it, like incense smoke, protected by it, like gold leaf pressed against the soul. You walk past temples carved into stone faces, past statues that haven't blinked in 3,000 years, and you hear them whisper your name, not because they knew you once, but because now you are one of them, part of the chorus, part of the legend, part of the light, and all around you, the air is alive with magic, not because of any trick, but because of remembrance. The ancient Egyptians believed that even when all else was stripped away, kingdoms, treasures, temples, what survived was the story. And now that story includes you. You've wandered through gods and demons, feathers and fire, scales and stars. You've peeked behind the veil and felt the ancient spells curl around your breath. Now it is time to rest. Not in darkness, not in silence, but in glowing stillness. A sacred hush, like the one inside a sealed tomb, heavy with golden air and eternal calm. So let your breath slow. Inhale, and imagine it's the sweet scent of blue lotus, the flower of rebirth that floated on the sacred Nile. Exhale, like the soft hush of sand blowing over time-worn stones. Feel the weight of the body melt into the earth, like the cow returning to its resting place. Let the bai, your soul bird, stretch its wings and settle onto your chest, not to fly away, but to perch, content and still, knowing the journey is done for now. Let your limbs be wrapped in invisible linen, soft and warm, protective and sacred. You are safe. You are remembered. You are part of the stars now. And with that, let your eyelids close. Let the Nile sing quietly in the distance. Let the gods keep watch from their high, golden thrones. And let yourself sleep. Now, take a deep breath in. Hold it gently and let it go. Again, inhale, exhale slowly. Let go of your day. Let go of the noise. You're not in your room anymore. You're in a temple under stars. A tomb wrapped in prayers. A river of time gliding softly into morning. No need to speak, no need to think. Just float. Float in the glow of Heka. Float in the arms of Nut. Safe and sleep under the endless eternal sky.